Hey guys, tonight we journey into a world you think you know, but trust me, you don't. Tonight's story is about sleep. Yes, sleep. Not swords, not plagues, not royal scandals or lost empires, just the quiet, ancient, utterly unmodern way that people used to close their eyes and drift off into the void. And while modern sleep gets all the glory mattress ads, sleep apps, lavender sprays, the truth is you might be surprised to hear that some of the best sleep in recorded history wasn't invented by a tech startup or perfected in a sleep lab. It was achieved quite unintentionally by medieval peasants. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, let me know in the comments what time it is where you're watching from. Midnight in Madrid. BAM in Tokyo. I always love seeing how far across the world our sleepy little history club stretches. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft hum. Snuggle under your blanket like you're curling up under a threadbare wool sheet in a damp 14th century cottage. And let's slip together into tonight's story. Tonight's journey. Why medieval peasants had the best sleep in history. It sounds like a joke, doesn't it? These were people who lived in drafty one-room huts, worked until their bones ached at dinner by firelight, and wore the same tunic until it turned into a fabric-based ecosystem. And yet, they slept. Deeply. Naturally. On a rhythm that we, with all our smart bulbs and blue light filters, have somehow forgotten. This wasn't 8 hours of Netflix-interrupted tossing and turning. This was segmented sleep, two distinct chunks of slumber separated by a gentle, wakeful period that wasn't a problem to be solved, but a feature of life. This was falling asleep when the sun went down, and waking when it rose, not because it was healthy or trendy, but because you had no choice. There was no light switch, no caffeine, no office commute, and certainly no alarm clock. But the story isn't just about the hours. It's about the texture of that sleep. The bed made of straw, the fire quietly hissing in the hearth, the shared warmth of bodies huddled against the cold, the quiet comfort of routine of knowing that tomorrow would be hard, yes, but predictable. That you wouldn't be waking up to 342 notifications or a surprise Zoom call. Just chores, chickens, and another day of survival. Strangely, it worked. Against all modern wisdom and luxury, the medieval world might have gifted its poorest citizens something we've spent billions trying to get back: deep, natural, rhythmic rest. And tonight, we're going to explore how. You'll wake up in a peasant hut. Feel the chill in the air, the weight of the blanket, the scent of firewood and damp wool. You'll move through the day, not like a lord or a knight, but as someone history forgot to glamorize. And when the sun goes down again, you'll find that somewhere between the hardships and the hunger, they found peace. In their sleep, at least. So lay back. Get still. Let your mind walk barefoot into the past. And let's begin. You open your eyes. The first thing you notice is the cold. Not the kind of cold that makes you shiver under a down comforter while you reach for the thermostat. This is bone-deep, mouth-dry, nose-stinging cold. The kind of cold that's crept into your mattress during the night and has no intention of leaving anytime soon. You're not in your bed. You're in a medieval peasant hut. Welcome back to the 14th century. There's no alarm, no phone buzzing, no blue light from a charging screen. Just faint gray light leaking through a shuttered hole in the wall, your version of a window, and the soft, almost inaudible sound of the wind brushing against a thatched roof that's seen better centuries. You're lying on a straw-stuffed sack. Not a mattress. A pallet. A crude rectangle of sackcloth filled with flattened, brittle straw that crunches softly beneath you as you shift your weight. You try to stretch, but there's not much room. Someone's elbow is near your ribs. A child, maybe two, are curled against your back. And someone else, perhaps your cousin, perhaps the neighbor's son, who sometimes just stays over, is snoring softly near your feet. The air smells of last night's fire, smoked cabbage, and human breath. The kind that lingers when no one has brushed their teeth since Michaelmas. You can also detect something sharp and sour. The chamber pot. It's tucked away in the corner of the room like a shameful little goblet of ammonia. You hope it wasn't used too generously during the night. There are no pillows, just rolled-up cloaks and the soft cushioning of your own arm. The blanket, if you're lucky enough to have one, is thick wool. It smells of animal's dust and the long, lingering trace of 1,000 unwashed nights. If you weren't lucky, it's just your clothes, the same ones you wore yesterday, and the day before that, and most days before that. You're still tired, but you've already had your first sleep. That's how it works here. You went to bed not long after sundown, huddled together to conserve heat and ward off the dark. You slept for 4 or 5 hours, first sleep they called it. And now for the next hour or two, you're supposed to be awake. Not fully, not energetically, just aware. It's a pause, a watch, a moment when people prayed, whispered, tended embers in the hearth, or simply lay still, eyes open, letting the night be what it was. You hear someone stirring, quiet so as not to wake the others. Maybe your mother rising to check the fire. She kneels, pokes the embers with an iron rod, and adds a small log, blowing gently to coax a little flame. The light flickers against the low wooden ceiling, painting everything in orange, gold, and soot. The walls are wattle and daub, interwoven wooden slats plastered with mud and straw. You can see the gaps in places where the plaster has fallen away. In summer, it lets in the flies. In winter, it lets in the cold. You reach for your boots, which are hard, stiff, and slightly damp. You left them too close to the door. There's a slug in one. Of course there is. As you sit up, you can hear the floor under you, a mix of packed earth, flattened rushes, and whatever was tracked in last night. It's soft in places, but not in a good way. You feel the texture of old straw, dried mud, and the occasional crunch of something that might once have been food. Outside, a rooster calls, not poetically, not like in the fairy tales, but loud, confused, and far too early. A dog barks in return. Not your dog. You don't own a dog. That would be a luxury. But someone nearby does, and it's having a heated debate with a wandering pig. The house is one room, no walls, no privacy. Everything happens here, sleeping, eating, giving birth, dying, grieving. In the daylight, it'll look like a smoky, crowded workshop of survival. Right now, in the early hush of the watch, it's simply quiet. You look around. A shelf above the hearth holds a few precious things, a carved spoon, a clay cup, a worn wooden cross, and a few wax stubs posing as candles. Everything smells faintly of smoke. Everything looks slightly singed. That's just what living next to fire does to a life. Your eyes itch. The soot. It's always in the air. Even in sleep, it finds you. In your clothes. In your lungs. You cough softly and rub your eyes with a sleeve that is surprise, rough and stiff with yesterday's labor. The fire flares slightly now. You can see your breath in the air. You pull the blanket or someone else's blanket tighter around your shoulders and glance at the wall where last summer's dried herbs hang in neat, brittle bundles. They're there for cooking, healing, and warding off illness. Whether they work is another question entirely. The sky outside lightens. A pale, dirty gold creeps through the wall slats. The second sleep will begin soon. You feel your body leaning toward it, muscles, heavy eyelids, slower, the weight of another workday, not quite pressing in yet. Someone mumbles in their sleep. A child rolls over and tucks into your side. You stay still. Warmth is precious. Motion is expensive. And here in this shared, smoky little room, in the fragile stillness between darkness and dawn, you begin to drift again. Second sleep. The kind of sleep that modernity forgot. The kind of sleep that wraps you up in soot straw and the simple comfort of having survived another night. You're not dreaming of castles. You're not dreaming of knights. You're just dreaming of soft soil, warm bread, and a morning that doesn't start with frostbite. You'll wake soon. The real day will begin. But for now, for this moment, this watch has ended. Sleep takes you. You wake again, this time for good. The second sleep has done its job. You're not refreshed exactly, but you're rested in the medieval sense, which means you can stand upright without swearing, and none of your limbs have gone numb from the cold or the proximity of a sibling's elbow. The room is brighter now. Thin daylight filters through the oiled cloth over the window hole, casting a murky golden haze across the dirt floor. The hearth is still burning barely, just enough to ward off the worst of the chill and to let you pretend you're warm. You rise slowly. No alarm, no buzzing. Just the knowledge that if you don't start your day soon, someone will take your share of breakfast and possibly your best spoon. You scratch your arm. It's itchy not from allergies or detergent, but from the rough wool tunic you've slept in for the past week. Or is it, too, you've lost track? Everyone here wears their clothes to bed, not out of laziness, but necessity. Laundry is a luxury. Soap is a theory. Bathing is a seasonal event, not a morning routine. You stand stretch carefully to avoid bumping anyone still asleep and make your way toward the hearth. Let's begin with hygiene, or as it's known here, not actively rotting. Your morning wash is minimal. There's no running water, no sink, no toothbrush lined up neatly on a tiled counter. Just a wooden basin of water someone fetched from the village well yesterday, now cold, possibly home to a floating bit of straw or a mosquito. You dip your fingers in and splash your face. It stings, not because of chemicals, but because the water is slightly above freezing, and you're wearing last week's grime like a second skin. You wipe your face with the edge of your tunic, which accomplishes exactly nothing except transferring soot from one place to another. Next comes your teeth, or rather your attempt at oral survival. There's no toothpaste, no mint, no brush. Some folks chew on sticks to clean their mouths, fraying the ends to scrub their teeth. If you're lucky, you've got a small twig from the ash tree rubbed against your molars like a splintered prayer. It doesn't help much. Your breath still smells like last night's onion stew and existential dread. But you've tried, and that's more than most. Your hands are filthy. They always are. There's no hot water, no antibacterial soap, no fancy foaming dispenser. Just the same cold basin from before, and a rag that's seen better centuries. You scrub half-heartedly and dry them on your cloak, which is arguably worse than doing nothing. Now breakfast. You don't eat to enjoy. You eat to survive. And this morning's meal is exactly what it was yesterday and the day before that pottage. A thick, grayish slop that simmers endlessly in a blackened pot over the fire. It's made from grains water, maybe some leeks, maybe a turnip if one was found that wasn't already half-eaten by something else. It's not fresh, it's not supposed to be. Pottage is a rolling project. You eat from it, you add to it, sometimes for days, sometimes for weeks. It's less of a recipe, more of an edible timeline. You take a wooden spoon and scoop up a lumpy mass. It steams faintly. That's the only indication it's cooked. The flavor is there, somewhere between gritty and desperation. You chew carefully. Stones from the grinding process sometimes make it into the meal, and a cracked tooth is not an affordable setback. Beside your bowl is a hunk of bread. Dark, coarse, heavy. Made from barley or rye, maybe both, maybe something else. It's stale, it's dry, and it's your only solid food. You dip it into the pottage to soften it, because your jaw can only do so much this early in the morning. It tastes like ash and patience. There's no coffee. There's no tea. There's no orange juice. There's ale, weak, cloudy, room temperature ale brewed at home or by the village woman who specializes in such things. You drink a mugful, not to feel cheerful, but because it's safer than water, and dulls the knowledge that this meal, your first, is probably your best of the day. You sit near the fire while you eat, not out of comfort, but out of strategy. The closer you are to the heat, the faster you can pretend your fingers aren't little frozen sticks of peasant suffering. The others begin to stir now, one by one. Your mother, your brothers, your sister rubbing her eyes. Everyone wears the same grim expression. Not anger, not sadness, just the resigned face of someone preparing to do everything again. A child cries. The baby's wet again. There are no diapers, no wipes. Just cloth rinsed in cold water and dried near the fire if at all. Your mother picks the baby up, cradles it with the ease of someone who doesn't need sleep anymore, because exhaustion is her entire being now. There's a faint scent in the air, smoke. Yes, but also body odor, old cabbage wood, ash, and something slightly sweet, the herbal bundle that hangs near the door, meant to ward off illness and keep flies at bay. It doesn't work. Nothing really works. But it's part of the routine. And routine in this world is everything. Someone opens the door, more of a hanging cloth than a door really, and cold air rushes in like an uninvited guest. You brace yourself. Outside is the world, the labor, the frozen ground, the endless need. But for now, you finish your meal, the pottage, the bread, a few sips of ale, maybe a piece of dried apple if someone was lucky yesterday. You wipe your mouth with your sleeve. Again. It's what sleeves are for. Your morning hygiene and breakfast are complete. Not clean, not nourished, just ready. Ready for the kind of day that makes you appreciate the night. Because when night comes, there will be the fire, the blanket, the pile of straw, the body heat of others, and sleep. That soft escape twice a night from the blisters and the bruises of daylight. But before you can sleep again, you have to live through the next 14 hours. You've eaten. You've washed, if you can call it that. Now it's time to dress for the day. Except spoiler, you already are. There is no wardrobe, no closet full of clean, neatly folded outfits. No drawer of options labeled casual business or rainy day mudfest. There is exactly one outfit. Maybe two if you're well off. You are already wearing it and have been for days, possibly weeks. Your clothes are a scratchy, stubborn miracle. A rough wool tunic coarse enough to file wood and durable enough to survive childbirth, livestock wrangling, and acts of God. Under it, if you're lucky, you have a linen undershirt. If not, your tunic touches your skin directly. It itches. Always. But you've learned to ignore it the same way you ignore hunger or back pain. It's just part of you now. The tunic is brown or gray or something that used to be another color before it met time smoke, and the medieval laundry process, which is just scrubbing fabric on a rock and praying for divine intervention. It's patched in places, stained in others. The knees are thin. The elbows are crusty. One sleeve is shorter than the other, not by design, but because a goat once chewed on it, and you never got around to sewing it properly. There's a belt, a bit of rope or leather tied around your waist. It holds up your pouch, your knife, and your sense of structure in a world where nothing else stays in place. Around your legs, hose, not quite pants, not quite tights. They're itchy, sagging, and full of character. That character is mostly fleas. Your shoes, if you have any, are hand-stitched leather, floppy, thin-soled. The medieval equivalent of wrapping your feet in regret and hoping for the best. You can feel every rock root and thistle through them. If you're not wearing shoes, well, that's normal too. Barefoot in mud dung and medieval mystery fluid is just a fact of life. Your soles are tough, your pride less so. And over it all, if it's cold, a cloak. Wool again, heavy, damp, and smelling vaguely of last week's weather. It fastens with a wooden pin or a bit of string. It doesn't keep you dry. Nothing does. It just keeps the wind from stealing your will to live quite as quickly. Now let's talk about shelter. The home you woke up in is, by modern standards, barely a structure. It's a one-room cottage, if we're being generous. A mud and stick cube with a roof made of thatch and a personality of its own. When it rains, the roof leaks. When it doesn't rain, it still leaks just out of habit. And in winter, it turns into a walk-in freezer minus the walls that actually insulate. The walls are wattle and daub, a charming euphemism for woven branches smeared with mud, manure, straw, and hope. They're not thick. They don't block sound. They don't block wind. They mostly just give bugs something to live in. Windows not quite. There's a hole in the wall covered in animal hide or maybe oiled parchment. It lets in just enough light to remind you how smoky the room is. Glass is a luxury you'll never see unless your lord drops his goblet and you get to clean it up. The floor is dirt. It's not metaphorical. It is literal, compacted earth worn smooth by feet and the passage of time. In winter, it freezes. In spring, it softens. In summer, it stinks. Sometimes straw is thrown down to clean it. That straw is rarely fresh. You don't sweep, you layer. Over time, it becomes a mulch of old rushes, lost buttons, animal hair, and forgotten food bits. A crunchy, smelly time capsule beneath your toes. There's no chimney. The fire in the hearth sends its smoke wherever it pleases. Some drifts upward through the thatch. Some hangs in the rafters like an indecisive ghost. The rest clings to your clothes, your hair, and your lungs. You're not just inhaling warmth, you're inhaling history. The hearth is the center of the house physically and emotionally. It provides warmth, light, cooking, and the only entertainment staring into flames. Around it, you cook your meals, dry your socks, pray, argue, give birth, die, and sometimes nap. The fire is everything. Letting it die is dangerous not just for your body, but your soul. Reigniting it is no small task, especially when the kindling is damp and the wind is feeling playful. There's no separate bedroom, no bathroom, no kitchen. Everything happens in one space. Cooking next to sleeping, next to living, next to squabbling, next to silently wondering if the draft you feel is from the door or from a hole in the wall that wasn't there last night. Furniture is minimal. A few stools, a crude table, a bench, maybe a wooden chest that holds your most valuable belongings, a spoon, a pair of socks with more holes than sock, and a religious token you secretly touch when things get hard, which is always. The roof groans in the wind. It creaks when the rain hits. Sometimes something small and furry falls out of it. Could be a mouse. Could be a rat. Could be that bird you thought flew away last summer. Either way, you shoo it out and pretend you didn't see it. Privacy, not a thing. There's no door you can close to escape, no corner you can claim. Everyone sees everything. You change clothes in silence. You go to the toilet with a bucket and a prayer. You live together, side by side, through every moment of life. The joys, the losses, the loud snoring, and the louder arguments. And yet, it's home. It smells of smoke, sweat, wool, and stale bread. It leaks, it shivers, it bends in the wind, but it keeps you from the rain. It hides you from wolves. It gives you a place to sleep, to eat, to exist. You know every creak in the floor, every bump in the wall, every squeak in the roof. It's not beautiful, but it's yours. And when night falls again, and the air turns still and cold, you'll return to it. To the hard bed, the shared blanket, the fire slowly dying in the hearth. You'll lie down in your itchy tunic, surrounded by the sounds of your family, breathing, snoring, shifting in their sleep. And somehow, despite the cold, the smell, the dampness, and the dirt, you will sleep. Heavily, deeply. More soundly than most modern millionaires, with memory foam mattresses and blackout curtains. Because you're exhausted. Because there's nothing to distract you. Because this small, strange, smoke-stained hut is the only world you've ever known. And in it, you're safe. That's shelter. That's clothing. That's life. The sun has officially risen, though you'd hardly call it shining. It's pale, sluggish, more like a sleepy candle trying to light the sky than a roaring orb of fire. But no one here cares about poetics. The light means work, and work means survival. You step outside the door, hanging crooked on a wooden peg, and are greeted by a landscape that looks more like labor than beauty. The ground is frozen in winter or damp in spring. In summer, it's dust. In autumn, it's mud. Whatever the season, the land demands something from you. And today, like every day, you'll give it. You're a peasant, not a farmer, not officially. You don't own your land. You don't control your schedule. You don't decide what to grow. That's for your Lord. You work his fields, you follow his rules, and you thank him out loud for the privilege. Your tools are few. A wooden spade, a dull iron hoe, a hand-carved rake, and a sickle you treat like family. There's no tractor, no pulley system, no gloves, just you, your back, and whatever strength you didn't lose to yesterday's pottage. First task of the morning animals. You check the pigs still alive, still angry. Chickens still pecking at things that aren't food. Goat staring at you like it's judging your whole life. You collect eggs if there are any and toss handfuls of grain that you probably shouldn't spare. The animals don't thank you. They never do. If it's your day to work the Lord's land, you go straight to his fields. If not, you work your own little strip, praying the harvest won't be terrible this year. Either way, you're walking across uneven paths with a bundle of tools on your back and a piece of bread stuffed into your tunic to count as lunch. Plowing is brutal. The soil is thick, stubborn, full of rocks and memories. The plow is pulled by oxen, but guiding it is no passive job. You walk behind boots, sinking hands, blistering sweat already pooling in places you didn't know could sweat. You push, steer, yell, and sometimes curse, though not too loudly. The church frowns on blasphemy before noon. Weeding comes next. You crouch for hours, plucking intruders from the earth, fingernails caked in mud. Your back screams. Your knees crackle like old parchment. You shift your weight and keep going. If you stop, the weeds win, and if the weeds win, you starve. Harvest season is somehow worse. You cut barley or rye by hand, sickle swooping in slow arcs while the sun bleaches your skin and the dust makes your throat feel like you swallowed a chimney. You tie sheaves. You carry bundles. You fall asleep standing up, then wake up and keep cutting. Sometimes you repair things. Fences, gates, roofs. You're not a carpenter, but you have a knife and an opinion. If it holds for one more season, it's a success. If not, well, you've learned not to get too attached to anything made of wood, including your own knees. If it's market day, you haul your goods, vegetables, eggs, maybe a bit of cheese on foot to the village square. The trip is long. The mud is thick. The cartwheel is bent. You haggle badly. You get less than your goods are worth, but it's still more than nothing. Winter brings a different kind of labor. Less field work, more survival. You chop wood until your arms beg for mercy. You repair thatch with numb fingers. You trap rabbits if you're lucky, or rats if you're realistic. You sew. You mend. You stack dried dung for fuel. Yes, dried dung. It's warm and flammable and only smells horrible for the first 20 minutes. Women work too constantly. They grind grain with handstones until their shoulders throb. They spin wool with fingers that never stop twitching. They cook clean, haul, water-tend babies, and somehow also find time to plant vegetables. And no, they don't get to nap. Not ever. The word nap hasn't been invented yet. They just close their eyes for 3 seconds and call that rest. Children aren't spared. The moment they can walk without falling into a well, they're sent to fetch things, carry things, scare birds from fields, or spin thread until their tiny fingers knot with effort. Childhood is not a magical adventure. It's an unpaid internship with chores. And over it all, there's always someone watching. A reeve appointed by the Lord keeps track of how much land you've worked, how many days you've spent on duty, how many sacks of grain you owe. Miss your quota and you'll be fined. Fined with what you don't know. You don't have anything left to give. But they'll find something. Your hands are blistered. Your shoulders ache. Your eyes sting from smoke, sun, and the endless dust of life. You don't complain. Complaining doesn't exist here. Not publicly. Not loudly. You just grunt, wipe your brow, and keep going. And still somehow you laugh. Not all day. Not often. But someone tells a joke while repairing a fence. Someone sings while hauling hay. Someone sneezes so violently they fall into a pig trough, and for 5 glorious seconds everyone forgets how hard life is. That's the miracle of labor. It binds. It brutalizes. It keeps you moving when your body wants to stop. And it makes sleep not just desirable but inevitable. By the time the sun begins to drop, your muscles are waterlogged with effort. Your stomach is hollow. Your mind is a fog. You don't dream of luxury. You dream of sitting, of being still, of letting the day finally release its grip on your spine. There are no calendars, no weekends, no days off, just work and the occasional feast day when you're allowed to celebrate the saint who theoretically protects your back while it cracks in half. But even then, someone's still cooking, still feeding animals, still nursing a crying child in the corner of the field. And yet, there is sleep. It's waiting for you, like a friend who doesn't ask questions. Tonight, you will collapse. Not delicately, not gracefully. You'll drop into your straw bed like a sack of meat. You'll be asleep before your feet are warm. You'll sleep the kind of sleep that only comes after complete physical obliteration. Not just because you're tired, but because you've earned it. And in this world, this ancient, unforgiving, splinter-covered, blister-producing world that is your only real reward. The sun has dipped below the horizon. Again. And as darkness creeps into every corner of your tiny, smoky world, something else stirs in its place: belief. You may be poor. You may be dirty. You may not own the land you toil upon or the clothes on your back, but you do have one thing that helps you endure religion. Or more specifically, the ever-present, all-consuming fear of the divine, the demonic, and everything in between. You don't think about theology. You live it. There's no questioning, no gentle exploration of philosophy over wine and a candle. Your beliefs aren't a choice, they're the air you breathe. And tonight, as the wind moans through the thatch and the fire casts long, twitching shadows on the wall, you remember exactly what kind of world you live in. You believe in God, of course. That's non-negotiable. The church said so, your parents said so, and the man who taxes your goats said so with a long stick and a reminder that tithing is not optional. But your God is not a soft-spoken therapist in the sky. He's a towering, wrathful force who watches everything you do and writes it all down in a book you'll never read, but definitely fear. You also believe in saints, dozens of them, each with a job. St. Anthony helps with skin diseases. St. Jude helps when all hope is lost. St. Isidore might help your crops if you bribe him properly with prayers, candles, and the occasional pig. You don't pray to Jesus directly. He's busy. You go through his friends, like divine middle management. And then there's the devil. Oh yes, you believe in him too, deeply, physically. He's not just a metaphor. He's real. He's nearby. He's probably in the forest. Or maybe in the goat that won't stop staring at you. He's always watching, always tempting, always waiting for you to think one impure thought or accidentally eat meat on a Friday. Demons, absolutely. Witches, without a doubt. The old woman who lives alone at the edge of the village, suspicious. The sudden illness that took your cousin last spring. Cursed. The strange noises you heard in the night. Not rats, hellspawn. Best to cross yourself and spit into the fire. You've never read the Bible. You can't read. But you've heard it. From the pulpit. From the priest. From the visiting friar with no teeth who speaks like God is angry and probably right to be. You don't remember the words, but you remember the message: obey, suffer quietly, and pay your tithe. And so you obey. You attend Mass when told. You kneel, you cross yourself, you mutter prayers you don't entirely understand. You fast when required, even though fasting just means being slightly hungrier than usual. You confess your sins, even the ones you didn't commit, just to be safe. You fear the priest, but you fear the judgment of heaven more. Your daily life is filled with rituals, not just religious ones, but superstitious ones, little protective habits passed down through generations. You hang herbs over the door. You knock on wood. You avoid walking under ladders, stepping over graves, or speaking the name of someone who died badly. Before you light the hearth, you whisper a prayer to Saint Bridget. Before you leave the house, you trace a cross on the door. If a child falls ill, you tie red thread around their wrist and sprinkle holy water on their bed. If that doesn't work, you blame the neighbors, or the fairies, or sin. Fairies, yes. Not the kind with wings and sparkles. These are the old ones, the unseen ones. The ones who steal milk, sour butter, and sometimes when they're feeling bold, children. If your baby is sickly and cries too much, some say it's not your baby at all. It's a changeling, a fairy's trick. There are ways to test it, ways to drive it out. But we won't talk about those here. Not before bed. Even dreams are sacred or dangerous. You don't interpret them as your subconscious. You assume they're messages. From angels. From demons. From the dead. A dream of fire might mean hell. A dream of water might mean illness. A dream of someone you love best pray extra hard tomorrow. The church dictates not just your faith, but your calendar. What you eat, when you marry, when you mourn, which days you must fast, which days you must celebrate. Half the year is made of feast days and holy days, and days when you absolutely cannot do laundry, no matter how filthy your socks are. On Sundays, you rest, but not because you want to, because you're told to. Breaking the Sabbath is a serious offense. Even thinking about work on Sunday could bring bad luck. Or worse, the village priest's attention. You fear sin like modern people fear credit card debt. It's invisible. It's accumulating. And it's probably going to ruin your life eventually. Pride, lust, envy, all lurking in your soul like spiritual infections. And every time something goes wrong, a bad harvest, a sudden fever, a broken tool, you wonder if it's because you swore last week or thought something impure during Lent. Still, there is comfort in belief. There is safety in ritual. When the world makes no sense and everything hurts and the sky is silent, your faith gives structure. The bell rings. The Mass is spoken. The candles flicker in their proper order. And when night falls fully and you climb into your bed of straw, you cross yourself once more. You whisper a prayer you've known since you were small. Not because it guarantees protection, but because you don't dare skip it. You pull the blanket to your chin. You listen for demons in the wind, saints in the stars, angels in the silence. And if your soul is at peace just a little, then maybe, just maybe, your sleep will be deep. Because nothing puts a mind to rest like knowing you've done what the church asked. And if something visits you in your dreams tonight, well, light a candle in the morning. Just in case, the bells toll softly in the distance. Evening. The work is done or as done as it ever gets in a life where the weeds always grow back and the roof always leaks. Your tools are leaned against the wall, your hands are cracked, and your knees make a squelching sound when you move, which probably isn't good. But it's over for today. And that means one thing: dinner. Not a feast. Not a family-style spread with steaming trays and tablecloths. Dinner for a medieval peasant is humble, sparse, sometimes disappointing, occasionally suspicious, but it's warm and it's yours. You gather around the hearth, the same spot where you cooked breakfast, the same spot where you warmed your feet, the same spot where you'll sleep again soon. The hearth is everything, and from its smoky embrace emerges your evening meal: more pottage. It's still the same pot from this morning, and yesterday, and likely the day before. The stew never ends, it just evolves. Some barley, a few root vegetables. On special days, a scrap of meat or a chunk of bone to boil flavor out of. You dip your bread in it, the same coarse, dry loaf from earlier, now slightly less stale from steam. You chew carefully. There are hazards. Grit from poorly ground flour. Bits of bark mistaken for herbs. The occasional beetle, which is probably protein if you don't think about it too hard. There's no cutlery beyond your wooden spoon. No plates, no bowls for everyone. Maybe 2 or 3 communal ones passed around. You eat quickly, not out of gluttony but necessity. The food isn't going anywhere, but you know how fast portions disappear when your cousin is feeling ambitious with his appetite. You drink ale again, weak, cloudy, and barely fermented, made with barley water and the vague memory of hops. It's safer than the well water, which has a tendency to carry little surprises like dysentery and regret. Children drink it too, though theirs is watered down further, just enough to make them sleepy and compliant. Sometimes, if you're lucky, or if it's a feast day, you get cheese. Hard, sharp, made by your mother or the neighbor's wife who keeps goats. It smells like something you'd normally bury, but it's a delicacy. You savor it slowly, eyes half closed, as though it's a gift from heaven. Because in this life it kind of is. And then the best part, company. You talk. Quietly, carefully, with people you've known since you were born. You discuss the weather, the crops, the cow that's looking suspiciously thinner than she should. Gossip in the medieval world is currency. Who stole apples from the Lord's orchard? Who's been skipping Mass? Who's got a rash they won't talk about? There's laughter. Always a little, usually dark. Jokes about dying in childbirth. About the Lord's horse biting someone. About the reeve falling into a puddle and swearing at God. You laugh not because it's funny, but because it's necessary. Laughter is resistance and survival. Sometimes the men go to the tavern. It's a dim little building near the center of the village, probably owned by the same woman who brews the ale in your cup. There's no menu, no wine list. Just jugs of beer, a bench, and the collective sigh of men pretending they're not afraid of everything. The tavern smells of sweat, smoke, sour ale, and sometimes vomit. The floor is dirt. The ceiling is low. The warmth comes from bodies, not fires. But it's where stories live. Someone sings a crude song. Someone challenges someone else to arm wrestling. Someone carves a picture into the table with a knife they aren't supposed to have. You listen. You nod. You drink slowly because you can't afford another. You laugh when everyone laughs and try not to think about the cold bed waiting at home. This is your escape. Your 10 minutes of being a man, not just a peasant. Of feeling like you own something, even if it's just your own name. If you don't go to the tavern, maybe there's a festival. Maybe. These are rare. Saints' days, harvest festivals, holy days too big to ignore. The whole village gathers. Someone plays a crude flute. Someone drums on a bucket. People dance in circles, stomping and twirling in rhythm with the same 4 songs you've heard since you were old enough to walk. Children run wild. Dogs steal scraps. Someone brings out mead, sweet and strange. There might be meat, a roasted pig if the harvest was kind, or a goose caught from the riverbank. You eat too much. You drink a little too fast. You laugh until your ribs hurt. Then the priest reminds everyone to thank God, and the joy folds quietly back into reverence. The market, when it happens, is entertainment too, not just for shopping. You go to see the people, the traveling peddlers with strange accents and stranger wares, the jugglers, the acrobats, the man with the dancing bear who smells like onions and risk. You can't afford anything, but you look. You dream. You stare at a comb made from bone and wonder what it's like to own something pretty. The theater comes occasionally. A wagon pulled by tired oxen. Players dressed in worn costumes performing mystery plays for a cluster of open mouths and frozen toes. You don't understand all the words, but the devil is always funny, and the priest is always angry, and someone always falls into a barrel. And then there are nights like this one. Quiet. Simple. Where dinner is enough. Where no one argues. Where the fire is warm and the shadows on the walls are soft and slow. You sit. You sigh. You wrap your cloak tighter. And for a few minutes, you just exist. No one expects entertainment every night. Life itself is entertainment enough. A birth, a death, a storm, a stranger, a song sung softly while mending a tunic by firelight. And all of it, the laughter, the food, the stories, softens you. It dulls the sharpness of the day. It warms your belly just enough that the cold of the night won't bite as hard. You clean your spoon. You rinse your cup. You roll out your straw mattress again in the same corner next to the same people beneath the same roof. And as you lie down, full of something pottage ale joy, you realize this was a good night. Because here good doesn't mean easy. It means enough. You're lying in bed again. The straw is cold. The fire has dwindled to embers. And your belly, though fed, has begun to grumble with that slow, creeping uncertainty. Not hunger. Not discomfort. Something else. A tightness in the chest. A strange ache in your side. A child coughing in the corner. A woman whispering a prayer. Illness has entered the room. It's always nearby. Always waiting. Not just the big ones, the famous ones plague pox, leprosy, but the small, persistent shadows that stalk every medieval home. A scratch that festers, a toothache that spreads, a fever that comes without warning and never leaves. You don't understand germs. No one does. The word doesn't exist. Disease to you isn't biology, it's punishment. From God, from demons, from a curse placed by a jealous neighbor, or a spirit offended by your failure to say a prayer before stepping outside. Illness is mystical, moral, unpredictable, and everywhere. You know it by smell, that sour, yeasty scent of sweat and fear. You know it by sound, the wet cough that doesn't stop, the rattle in the chest, the way your mother doesn't get up even though she always does. You feel it in the air. Thick. Still. Heavy with expectation. There's no hospital. No clinic. The word doctor doesn't mean what you think. It might mean the village barber who sharpens blades by day and opens veins by night. Or the herbalist, a woman with 37 kinds of dried plants and no official approval. Or the priest who performs last rites and sometimes also diagnoses excess of sin as a medical condition. If you're sick, you pray. You light a candle. You drink bitter tea made from boiled roots that taste like regret. If you're lucky, it helps. If not, you try bloodletting, a practice as horrifying as it sounds. A cut to balance the humors. Too much blood, they say. Let it out. Maybe it works. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe you were just going to get better or worse on your own. If your stomach aches, it could be worms. If your head aches, it could be spirits. If your leg aches, it could be your body remembering every misstep from childhood to yesterday. Pregnancy isn't an illness technically, but it might as well be. Because there's no certainty. No safety, no guarantee you'll survive it. Childbirth is a private war fought on a straw mattress in a smoky room with nothing but boiling water, whispered prayers, and a midwife whose hands are steady but not clean. Infection is common. Fever is frequent. Mortality is assumed. Some babies are born and die before they're named. Some women give birth and never speak again. Some children simply fade. No loud illness, no screaming, just smaller, quieter breaths each day until there are none. You've seen it happen. You've watched someone close their eyes to sleep and never open them again. You've heard the silence afterward, heavier than grief, more final than prayer. When someone dies, it's fast. There's no autopsy, no investigation. Just a wooden cart, a white sheet, and the tolling of the church bell. You fear death deeply. But not just the act of dying. It's what happens next. The judgment, the weighing of your soul, the imagined faces of all the saints you didn't pray to enough, all the sins you forgot to confess, all the meat you might have eaten on the wrong day. The priest speaks of hell often, vividly, fire, worms, eternal pain. But there's purgatory too, a waiting room for the moderately damned. Your best hope is that someone lights candles in your name after you're gone, that someone prays, that someone remembers you. If you're ill, you may be isolated, not out of cruelty, but fear. People believe disease is contagious, though not in the way we know. They think it travels on breath in evil smells through miasma, bad air. So your bed may be placed near the door for ventilation, or in the barn, or behind a curtain made of a single sheet. You're given charms, a carved cross, a dried flower, a relic supposedly touched by a saint, though more likely just touched by someone with confidence and a business model. You may be bled again, or purged with herbs that make you vomit cry, or hallucinate conversations with your long-dead aunt. You might drink something called posset milk curdled with ale and spiced with hope. You might survive. Or not. And still, life goes on around you. The others still work, still gather at the hearth, still laugh quietly, because if you don't laugh, you begin to notice the shadow sitting in the corner, waiting patiently. The graveyard isn't far. It's part of life. You pass it often. You visit it more often than you'd like. Simple wooden markers, a few stones, names you recognize, dates that are far too short. The plague, when it comes, and it does, changes everything. There are no funerals, no prayers, just mass pits, fires, silence. People vanish. Houses are boarded up. The church bell stops ringing, not because no one dies, but because there's no one left to pull the rope. Even the healer is scared. Even the priest starts to whisper his own last rites. But let's return to tonight. You're not dead. Not yet. You're just sore. Just tired. Just aware of how fragile everything is. You feel a twinge in your stomach and wonder quietly if this is it. You cough once and immediately think of last winter's fever. You cross yourself, lie still, and beg whatever saint is listening to give you one more morning. And somehow that uncertainty of whether you'll wake up at all makes sleep deeper. Not out of peace, but out of surrender. You let go, you close your eyes, because nothing else can be done. There's no 911, no ambulance, no emergency room. There's just time and prayer, and the hope that if you don't wake up, someone remembers your name long enough to speak it in church. And if you do wake up, you start again, because survival isn't about triumph here. It's about persistence. One cough at a time, one remedy, one whispered prayer, one more night. The morning comes again, gray and cool, and unsentimental. And before your feet even touch the cold dirt floor, one thing is certain. Someone else is already up. Likely a woman. Women don't rest here. Not fully. Not in a way you'd recognize. Sleep for them is something done around others' needs, when the fire is burning, when the baby is fed, when the stew is stirred, when the labor is finished and the room is quiet, which is to say, never. A medieval peasant woman lives a life braided into everyone else's. Her body is not hers. It's the village's, the family's, the church's. She wakes before dawn to tend the fire, prepare what passes for food, and manage the household with a focus that borders on divine. She does everything. She hauls water from the well, one heavy splashing bucket at a time. She grinds grain by hand, kneading dough with arms worn sinewy from years of repetition. She spins wool until her fingers throb. She weaves, sews, cooks, cleans, and somehow still has time to raise children. Plural, always plural. And if she doesn't have children yet, she's either trying recovering or burying one. Childbirth is her battlefield. There are no hospitals, no trained midwives in the modern sense. Just other women with experience, rags, boiling water, and calm voices honed by necessity. She might labor for hours, days, even on a straw bed, knees braced back arched, praying not for comfort, but for survival. And when the baby comes, there's no guarantee. It may cry. It may not. It may breathe only briefly before returning to the silence from which it came. If it lives, the real work begins. Infants in the medieval world are delicate things, vulnerable to illness, cold, and bad luck. Mothers swaddle them tight, not just for warmth, but to straighten limbs and keep them safe from harm, both physical and spiritual. Charms are pinned to their clothes. Crosses are traced over their foreheads. They are watched constantly, feared for constantly loved desperately, but not coddled. There's no room for it. By the time a child is 5 or 6, they're working, helping with chores, feeding animals, spinning wool, learning by doing, because no one here can afford a childhood as we know it. Childhood is a brief, fragile pause between helplessness and labor. Boys are taught to follow their fathers, girls their mothers. Marriage isn't a dream. It's a contract. You don't choose who you love, you choose who helps your family survive. A good match isn't about affection. It's about land, livestock, and keeping peace between households that once fought over a goat. Young girls marry early, sometimes as young as 12 or 13. As soon as they can bear children, they are expected to. The cycle begins again: pregnancy, childbirth, loss, repetition. And with it, a quiet resilience that builds layer by layer until it's stronger than any sword. Love exists, but it's soft, functional, expressed in shared bread, a steady hand, a shoulder leaned on during winter. There are no love poems here, just a look across a smoky room when the baby finally falls asleep. And through it all, families remain close, not out of sentiment, but survival. Grandparents, if they live that long, help care for children. Older siblings teach younger ones. Everyone sleeps in the same room, eats from the same pot, weathers the same storms, literal and otherwise. Privacy doesn't exist. Every fight, every birth, every death happens within earshot. Secrets are luxuries. Modesty is functional. You share a bed with your sister, your cousin, your own children. You learn early what can be ignored and what must be noticed. The family unit isn't just blood, it's chosen necessity. Widows move in with brothers. Orphans are absorbed like stray kittens. Godparents, neighbors, midwives. These people orbit your world like moons always within reach. Alone is dangerous. Together is tolerable. And the roles are fixed. The man labors in the field. The woman labors in the home. The children labor anywhere they're told. If someone is missing, their absence echoes, not as grief necessarily, but as inconvenience. A mother's death is not just sad, it's catastrophic. No one knows how to run the home like she did. No one else knows where the thread is kept, or how to boil the roots just right, or when the bread dough is ready without touching it. Her knowledge isn't written, it's lived, passed from hand to hand. And when she's gone, something goes with her. And yet joy exists. Children laugh. They chase geese, play games with rocks, tell stories that make no sense but bring smiles anyway. A mother bent over her work pauses to brush hair from her daughter's face. A father returning from the fields lifts a tired toddler into the air, just once, just enough to draw a squeal. These are the small graces, the quiet moments, the reasons people keep going. At night, the family huddles close, not for warmth alone, but for comfort. The baby curls into the crook of an arm. The older child mumbles in sleep. The parents lie side by side, not speaking, just listening to the fire crackle and the wind scrape the walls. And in that soft, smoky silence there is something close to peace. Because family is not easy. It never was. But it is constant. Anchoring. Like the fire in the hearth, like the roof above your head, like the blanket that smells of smoke and bread. You drift off, listening to breathing, to the familiar creak of wood, to the occasional cough or sigh or rustle, and you know in some deep, half-forgotten part of you that this is what survival sounds like. It doesn't roar. It doesn't shine. It breathes. Afternoon returns like a hammer, and with it, the unspoken agreement of the peasant world: morning is for survival. Afternoon is for struggle. This is when tempers rise, when fatigue sharpens words, when blisters burst and tempers flare and someone drops a sack of grain and curses in a language older than Latin. Everyone is tired. Everyone is sore. And the sun, now high and unforgiving, makes even silence feel like a burden. But the fields do not pause for moods. You're still working. Maybe in the Lord's domain, turning hay under a sky that forgot how to be kind. Or maybe in your own tiny strip of land, trying to salvage enough cabbage to justify another winter. You bend. You lift. You sweat. You ache. And then something happens. A neighbor shouts. A tool is borrowed without asking. A goat strays where it shouldn't. The air thickens not just with heat, but with tension. Medieval villages are small, tight, cramped. Everyone knows everyone. Every debt, every grudge, every whispered insult half heard through a cottage wall. And so the conflict begins. Maybe it's shouted words over property lines, two men in dirt-streaked tunics arguing about who owns which corner of a muddy path. Maybe it's a woman accusing another of stealing eggs. Maybe it's a child caught throwing stones at livestock blamed on poor upbringing, or worse, claimed as witchcraft. There are no therapists, no conflict mediators, just loud voices, clumsy fists, and the occasional intervention from the reeve, the village enforcer chosen by the Lord, disliked by all. His word is law, at least until the Lord says otherwise, and his punishments. They vary. A fine. A public shaming. Stocks in the square where you sit with your ankles and wrists locked in place and children throw turnips until they're bored. Justice is not impartial. It's personal. It's shaped by favoritism, bribes, rumors, and what kind of mood the priest is in that week. If you're lucky, your punishment is minor. If not, you could find yourself branded beaten, or worst of all, exiled. But that's only if it's reported. Most conflicts don't escalate that far. Because the real punishment in a medieval village isn't official, it's social. The cold shoulder, the sudden silence when you enter a room, bread no longer shared, ale no longer offered, your child no longer invited to the group. This is a world built on cooperation. To be isolated is to be weakened, and weakness is dangerous. Women, too, face conflict, but theirs is quieter. A sideways glance, a whispered prayer that isn't shared, a missing spool of thread, a wet blanket dried near another woman's hearth. Everything is layered with meaning. Everyone is watching, and nothing goes unnoticed. Sometimes these social cracks widen. An accusation of theft, or of adultery, or of something darker. Witchcraft. That word, thick, heavy, whispered, can ruin a life, especially for women, especially for the odd ones, the healers, the solitary, the ones with too many cats and not enough friends. It doesn't take much. A child falls ill. A cow gives no milk. Someone has a nightmare and wakes up pointing. And suddenly the herbs you've gathered for years become proof. The ointment in your pouch becomes evidence. The baby you couldn't save becomes your curse. There's no trial. Not really. Just questions. Looks. The priest solemn and suspicious. Your neighbors suddenly strangers. The fire flickering too close. Sometimes you're lucky. The whispers pass. Other times, they don't. Even outside of witchcraft, violence simmers. Fights between men over debt insults women. Fights between families over land, livestock, lineage. Fights between the poor and those slightly less poor, because the rich are too far away to reach, so rage settles on those nearest. But organized justice exists, barely. The manorial court meets occasionally. A group of villagers overseen by the Lord's steward deciding disputes like who owes what, who insulted whom, who let their pigs eat someone's garden. It's half courtroom, half gossip circle. Sentences include fines, penance, or public humiliation. For bigger crimes, the church courts step in. Heresy, blasphemy, moral sins. They deal in salvation and damnation. A woman accused of adultery might walk barefoot through the village with a candle. A man who swore in church might have to fast. A thief might be whipped or have his hand removed. You get the idea. There is no jail, not in the way you know it. There are cells, sure, but they're temporary, filthy, and rarely used. Punishment is swift, symbolic, and designed to deter. Pain and shame are the preferred currencies of justice. But perhaps worst of all is the conflict you cannot see. The daily grinding, slow injustice of the system itself. You owe work to your Lord, your church, your village. Your crops are taxed. Your animals are taxed. Your time is taxed. And you can never quite catch up. The Lord's reeve shows up at your door listing what you owe in a voice that doesn't care how hungry your children are. You have no power to refuse, only to comply, or flee. And fleeing means becoming a vagabond, a stranger in another village, mistrusted, and often turned away. And yet, you endure. Not out of resilience, but out of inertia. Because this is how it's always been. Because the thought of something else, something better, is so far removed from your reality, it feels like a fairy tale. The sun begins to lower. The arguments simmer down. The bruises from a scuffle begin to darken. Someone throws water on a burning temper. Someone apologizes with half a loaf of bread. Because no one can afford enemies. Not for long. You return home. The warmth of the fire feels better after conflict. The company of family feels softer after a day of friction. The simple act of sitting in silence becomes a kind of healing. And later, when you lie down, still sore, still slightly angry, you sleep. Because here, sleep is the only thing no one can tax, regulate, or take from you. And when you sleep after a day like this, battered, worn, bruised by people and systems alike, it's not just rest, it's escape. Nightfall is here again. Not evening, not dusk, night, true and complete. And in the medieval world, night is not peaceful. It's not a cozy hour marked by gentle lamplight and ambient playlists. Night is dangerous, wild, thick with unseen threats and unwelcome sounds. It is the time of fear. The fire crackles low in the hearth, casting uncertain shadows on the walls. Shadows that twitch and shift and sometimes resemble things you'd rather not name. You huddle closer to the warmth, because once the fire goes out, there is no relighting it easily, not without effort, not without flint kindling and precious breath. There are no streetlights, no porch lamps, no soft glow from windows. Once the sun sets, the world outside your door becomes a solid black curtain. The path to the well is invisible. The road to the neighbor's house forgotten. You do not go out unless you must, because the dark doesn't just hide the night, it exposes your helplessness. Doors, if you have them, are barred, not locked. There are no keys here but braced with wood or heavy stones. Windows are shuttered tight, sealed with cloth or wood, not for warmth, for protection. Because you never know who or what is outside. Bandits roam even this close to villages. Strangers are never trusted. Vagabonds looking for food, for coin, for something they believe you have. Your house has nothing of value, but they don't know that. Or they don't care. One sharp knock in the night and the whole family wakes in a panic. Sometimes it's not people. It's animals. Wolves in winter. Foxes in the chicken pen. Rats scratching through your stores, trying to claw into the barrel of flour that must last the next 4 weeks. You listen closely. You always listen. And then there are the fires. You live in a house of straw wood and dry rushes. Fire is your friend by day, your predator by night. One spark, one coal knocked loose, one sleeping child too close to the flame, and everything you own, everything you built is gone. There is no fire department, just buckets, just screaming, just watching the roof collapse. So every night, the coals are banked with care. The fire is prayed over. You whisper a blessing. Some say it wards off the devil. Others just do it because it's what their mothers did. Still, you do sleep. You have to. You're too tired not to. But the sleep is light even in its depth, because you've learned to hear everything. The creak of wood, the cough of a child, the wind slipping through cracks in the daub. Every sound is catalogued, assessed, filed under normal or trouble. And then there's the death, not metaphorical, not poetic, real. Death walks the village by night. It creeps into beds, into lungs, into cribs. No one dies at noon. No one breathes their last in broad daylight. Death prefers midnight. The hour when you are most helpless, when no one is watching, when no one can fetch the priest fast enough. You've seen it before. A man goes to bed with a cough. By morning he's cold. A child has a fever. By sunrise she's still. A woman gives birth after supper. By the next bell she's gone and the baby with her. You sleep knowing this, feeling it, understanding that you may not wake, that your own body may betray you in the dark, that you may feel fine one moment and be breathless the next, and there is nothing you can do, no rescue, no medicine, no miracle, only prayer. You say it now, that same prayer you've whispered every night since childhood. Into thy hands, O Lord, I commend my spirit. You say it because your father did, because his father did, because it feels like the only shield you have. And still, you lie there, in the dark, in the cold, in the silence broken only by breathing and fire and wind. And you sleep, because even fear gets tired. Even dread runs out of things to say. And as you sink into your second sleep, this strange, forgotten rhythm of waking and resting, you realize that the terror of the night isn't new. It's always been here. It always will be. But so will morning. And if you're lucky, if the saints are kind, and the fire holds, and the rats don't chew through the last of the dried apples, you'll wake. And when you do, you'll stretch, you'll yawn, you'll thank God, and you'll do it all again. Because in this world, life is not guaranteed, but sleep, deep, dreamless, sacred sleep still belongs to you. And for now, that's enough. And now finally, we return to stillness. You're lying down again, just as you have every night, on straw, in the same corner, next to the same people, with the same aches, the same prayers, the same sigh of surrender that escapes your lips as your body gives itself over to sleep. You've earned it. Today, like every day, demanded everything from you. Your strength, your focus, your patience, your silence. You survived labor, hunger, smoke, the cold, the priest, the reeve, the angry neighbor, the twitchy goat, and the fear that maybe, just maybe, your child's cough isn't just a cough. But now there is nothing more to give. The fire is low but holding. The room is warm barely. The air smells of ash, wool, and bread. Someone has already begun snoring. A baby rustles gently in a cradle. Your eyes are heavy, but not the way modern people describe it. This isn't tired like a long commute or an overfull inbox. This is tired from the soul outward. And it's exactly what makes medieval sleep so different, so complete. Because sleep isn't a treat here. It isn't optimized. It isn't tracked by a smartwatch or debated in online forums. No one here is worried about their circadian rhythm or whether their dreams are productive. No one feels guilty for resting. You just sleep. When the sun goes down, you sleep. When your body says enough, you obey. There are no podcasts, no doom scrolling, no bedside lamp keeping you tethered to wakefulness like a forgotten appliance left running. And the sleep you get is unlike anything most modern people ever know. It comes in two parts. First, sleep beginning just after sundown. Deep, immediate, like dropping into a well of unconsciousness. 4 or 5 hours of pure physical blackout. No interruptions, no insomnia. Just your body recovering from a day it barely survived. Then the watch. A natural waking sometime after midnight. You lie still. Sometimes you rise. You stir the fire. You whisper a prayer. You talk quietly to your spouse. You tend to the child. You sit in the dark and let your mind drift. This is not insomnia. This is built into your body. This space between sleep is not an error, it's a ritual, a pocket of stillness before returning to rest. And then second sleep, another few hours, sometimes more, sometimes less, but always deeper than the first. A calm, undisturbed descent into slumber. No alarms, no sudden jolt into wakefulness. You rise when the light returns, or when the rooster loses its mind. This rhythm, first sleep, the watch, second sleep, was natural, ubiquitous, human. It wasn't a flaw in their biology. It was a gift carved by candlelight and silence and the absence of artificial distraction. In this quiet structure, peasants slept well, because they had no choice. And in that absence of choice, they found something we've lost. Permission to rest. True rest. Not earned by success. Not scheduled between meetings. Not regulated by apps or guilt or self-help books. Just given every night because the body demanded it and the world allowed it. There is something beautiful in that. Not the struggle, not the pain, not the hunger or injustice, but the way sleep fit into life so naturally, so completely, like a second soul. And now as you lie in your own bed, maybe soft, maybe memory foam, maybe full of pillows and comforts they never dreamed of, you carry something from that world with you. An echo of straw beneath your back, of firelight flickering on the walls, of quiet breathing all around you, of the still holy hush between sleep and waking. So let that echo carry you. Let the fire die low. Let the day drop away like a worn-out tunic tossed to the floor. Let the ache in your limbs be enough. Let the sound of the wind be the last thing you hear. And sleep. Sleep deeply. Not because you earned it, but because you are alive. Because you are here. Because the world outside can wait. And tonight, as you drift off, remember, you don't have to wake up in the Middle Ages. Sleep well.